from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk or say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told you.
Are you worried about the man?
They hate us. That's the truth. They want to kill and torture every one of us. You can see it in their eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't know what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation of evil. You must be delivered from evil.
Brown-haired albino was unbuttoning his coat, his eyes on Cermak, who was shaking hands with Roosevelt.
Well, it's wonderful to see you, Tony. A lovely gesture.
I just wanted to remind you and your administration that you have my full and enthusiastic support.
The albino assassin was reaching under his coat, but I grabbed his arm and pulled it away, and his hand came back empty, the gun still under his arm as his coat flapped. I buried a fist in his belly and doubled him over. And when he came up, the snout of my 9mm stared him in the face.
You got you this time, fucker!
Sounded like firecrackers, and the muzzle flash above the crowd looked like fireworks, but this was something else. Blurred figures in the crowd were falling, and a stubby, bushy-haired brown little man in a white shirt standing up on a bench was swarmed like a come-to-Jesus meeting got out of hand. Meanwhile, the ex-blonde was pulling away, and I swung at him, and he went down, unconscious, as the mass of people around us were heading to my right. I moved against the tide towards Cermak, pushing, shoving, and got to that touring car where Miller and Lang were crouched over the fallen Cermak, red spreading from his left side under his unbuttoned suit coat.
Where? Where were the goddamn bodyguards?
I had the blonde, Your Honor. He didn't fire the round. Some bushy-haired little creep.
This was no time to tell him he'd been shot by his son-in-law's gardener.
What the hell? They got me after all, Heller.
The crowd was turning into a mob. Miller, Lang, and I were hovering over Cermak in the quiet of the storm.
Heller, get your people out of the way. We need to move the president and his vehicle out of here.
For Christ's sakes, Cermak's been shot. Take him with you. Get him to a hospital.
Roosevelt, sitting in back, heard me.
Put Tony in here and get us the hell out.
The shooter's big revolver was clicking on an empty chamber now. But that must have had an 8-round rod, as I found myself on a battlefield where bleeding audience members wandered like wounded warriors, helped by their dazed loved ones. The brown-haired...
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it's I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi, Robert Meyer Burnett. I'm, of course, Robcasting at you Imagination Connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode 1049. You know, Marvel news dropped. Had to jump on it. It's Sunday. I was power washing the deck after I did this morning's Let's Get Physical media. And I figured, hey, why not? Why not jump on a little early? Maybe I could watch a few of those discs I bought. I got to look at that Criterion Sorcerer. You know, that great Tangerine Dream theme song. If you don't know it, you should know it. They used it in the trailer for The Warriors. Go watch the trailer for The Warriors. Not right now, but after the show's over. And listen to the music they use for the trailer of The Warriors. It is the theme, Tangerine Dream's theme to Sorcerer. That's a little movie trivia for you today. So, yeah, you know, A lot of stuff to talk about. Got some good letters to read. You guys are killing it with the letter writing. You're you know, all the other YouTube channels on YouTube, because they're YouTube channels, you know, the discourse gets a little salty, but you guys really elevate the discourse with your commentary that you're sending into me. And it's not just about Superman or Star Trek either, because the less said about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the better. But more on that later, and no, I'm not going to review it. It's not worth my time. I'm sorry. I could steal from original Star Trek episodes too, and I could do it much cheaper and better. But, you know, we'll talk about that later. Gosh, I mean, in the first 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds, they steal from the first season original series episode Arena and do it badly. And then they steal not only from the episode The Squire of Gothos, but they add John Delancey as if it's some shocking revelation that Trelane is a Q. Or a young Q, Q2, whatever. Did anyone give a cursory glance? I mean, Peter David wrote a great hardcover Star Trek novel about all that. It's just, like, is there ever going to be an original episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, or does all of it have to be stolen or ripped off from somewhere else? My God, what does that writing staff get paid for? Certainly not writing good Star Trek. Not that. Anyway, back to the Marvel news. Hey, look, I'm not going to lie. I'm excited to see Fantastic Four. First steps, a good friend of mine saw it already and really liked it. The news, the social media reactions have been good. I shouldn't say I don't know much about it. I've been told a lot about it, but I can say non-spoilers. The thing that makes it really appealing to me is it's completely hermetically sealed in its own universe. It doesn't spill over into our universe at all. And they really concentrate on this group, the Fantastic Four, that belongs to what's going to be eventually the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But they're in their own universe throughout this entire film, which means they've got their own Silver Surfer, their own version of Galactus. I'm really interested to see how it all works, and everyone says the chemistry is great, the characters are great, the effects are great, the music is great, the direction's great, and it really is old school Fantastic Four in the sense that, or old school MCU, in the sense that it really takes its time to establish the characters the way that Thor, the way that Iron Man 1, and the way that Captain America, the First Avenger did, which I think is terrific. And everything I've heard about it seems terrific. I like this weird, maybe it's not weird because I haven't seen it, this weird comparison to Interstellar. People are saying the space stuff looks like Interstellar. And look, you had me at, look, I'm an easy lay. You put something in outer space, I'll watch it. Okay? Doesn't have to be good. I'll just watch it. Maybe it'll be great, but I don't care. Just show me space, I'm hooked. And apparently these space scenes are great. I just wanted to see a Kirby-esque ship. You catch a glimpse of that in one of the later trailers that they've recently dropped. I want to see what it looks like inside, you know. I hope we get that. I think we probably will. But so there was some kind of a Marvel conclave, call it what you want, where Kevin Feige spoke about the current state of the MCU on the, well, it's not quite the eve, but the Eve week. Just a few days now. I mean, it opens Thursday. I don't know if there's Wednesday night previews, Thursday Comic-Con, obviously. I wish they'd opened it the week before Comic-Con, but it's kind of cool that Fantastic Four is opening Marvel's First Family again for this would be the 5th time. Maybe the 5th time is the charm. And yes, I'm including the Roger Corman version of Fantastic Four, which has its charms. And, you know, everybody can get it now, so it's not something you can't get. And by the way, where the tip link is in the description, if you want to use a tip link, I only put one of these articles. I didn't realize there was actually 2. So one's from Deadline, one's from The Hollywood Reporter. But anyway, I'll put you the link in the Deadline article. If you want to use a tip link, you can. Super chats, whatever. And send me letters. You know, I got letters to read. So it's very exciting. I'm going to jump right in to this article because I found it, honestly, fascinating. So this first article comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter. It is a Heat Vision article. Apparently a lot of reporters were at this thing, and so you're going to see a lot of this reporting across the web. And this comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter by Boris Kitt and by Pamela McClintock, and this was published at noon today in the Hollywood Reporter. Marvel's Kevin Feige talks scaling back, losing Kang, and his texts to James Gunn after Superman. Ahead of Fantastic Four First Steps, the studio boss engaged in a freewheeling conversation with journalists, where he spoke extensively about the stumbles of the post-Endgame content boom, why Miles Morales won't be coming to the MCU anytime soon, and what's going on with Blade. In a nondescript conference room on the very descript floor of Marvel Studios, full-size Iron Man statues, superhero murals, and movie props, is a padlocked door. Behind that padlocked door is a whiteboard featuring the plan, or a plan, for Marvel movies spanning the next 7 years. That sounds like a Prince lyric. So teased Marvel Studios boss Kevin Feige, the producer behind the most successful run of movies in Hollywood's history, as he welcomed a select group of journalists onto the same floor where he first met Doctor Strange star Benedict Cumberbatch, and where filmmaker Chloe Zhao pitched her take on the Eternals, the most misunderstood and underappreciated Marvel film, in my humble opinion. Don't laugh because I used the word humble. Come on now. Marvel's run has been tested of late, this year especially, with Thunderbolts and Captain America Brave New World, which grossed among the lowest totals for the company. But Feige isn't interested in your theories of superhero fatigue, which he doesn't buy as real. He pointed to DC Studios' Superman, which is doing strong at the box office, at least domestically. It's made $171 million foreign, so it's not like no one's going to see it. Feige said he texted filmmaker James Gunn to let him know how much he liked it. I love how you just jump right into it, Feige enthused of the film, which Gunn directed after he helmed 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies for Marvel before decamping to run DC Studios. You don't know who Mr. Terrific is? Tough, you'll figure it out. You don't know what this is? Just go. This is a fully fleshed out world. Even if he doesn't buy the idea of superhero fatigue, Feige and his team have done plenty of postmortems on this year's underperforming movies, and all their movies since the massive success of Avengers Endgame. Right now, the company is prepping for the July 25th release, in 5 days, of its latest movie, Fantastic Four: First Steps. It's the first time Marvel Studios is handling the characters after a trio of movies of various quality and box office made by 20th Century Fox before its 2019 acquisition by Disney. There was also the never-released 1994 feature produced low-budget. There was also the never-released 1994 feature produced by low-budget king Roger Corman. Fun fact, the 4 stars of that movie cameo in First Steps. One thing that Feige seemed to relish is that this new movie is mostly self-contained and is in a fully fleshed out world that doesn't require that dreaded word homework. And that is true. Not the movie itself, nor the post-credit sequences take place anywhere else but this one Fantastic Four universe. We didn't want to have the Eternals issue of where were they? Where have they been? How come they didn't help with Thanos? He explained. We wanted them to be apart from our reality so that we didn't have to say, oh, look, they were hiding over here. And highlighting a 1960s aesthetic was more than just a period piece choice. It was a unique aesthetic that felt like it could absolutely be its own world, its own reality, said Feige. And when we show it to audiences in the screening process that we do leading up to it, people just accept it right off the bat and feel liberated that they can enjoy what's ahead of them. He underscored, it is no homework required. Interestingly enough, I was told, and this came directly from a person who worked at Disney, that Fantastic Four, this was what was conveyed to me, was the most, it was tested more than any other MCU film. Now, this is not a bad thing. When they're testing a movie, all they're doing is showing it to people and getting notes. That's what a test screening is all about. People, there's a tendency, I think, amongst the online film diaspora or universe, whatever you want to call it, that this idea that test screenings somehow equate to something wrong, which isn't true. Like if you're making a comedy, as someone who has made a comedy before, I've written and directed and edited a comedy, it was incredibly helpful to show the audience, various audiences, the film, because comedies don't lie. People either laugh or they don't. If they don't laugh, you have a problem, and you have to address it and figure out, well, what's the problem? So the more you test a comedy, the more you can see what works and what doesn't. And as I was my own editor, I went through various iterations of our own film Free Enterprise, which hopefully I'll get out in 4K soon because it's been out of print for 20 years. Somebody help me do this. And it was very interesting. And so we were able to kind of hone the film and make it the best it can be. And a lot of the times you realize we did this also for Tango Shalom, which is now called Forbidden Tango, a movie that I produced and also edited and was the post supervisor and the VFX supervisor. You can see it right now on Amazon if you choose to. As the editor of that film, I had a lot more creative leeway with the director than any editor probably ever had in shaping that movie. And I take all the responsibility if there's things in it you don't like or think that aren't funny. But so in doing the Fantastic Four, they were honing this movie down for pacing issues. They were making sure that everything hit the way they wanted it to. And by testing it a lot, because this was an important film, that means it's more artisanal. It's almost, call it handcrafted if you want. And they were smart. The people at Marvel are very smart. They know of what they have. And this was not a movie that had lots of reshoots or anything like that, but they, you do what's called pickups. Even in our low-budget Forbidden Tango, I had a revelation late in the editorial process, and we did a half-day shoot and dropped some things in almost at the 11th hour. This is the iterative process of filmmaking. And this was an important film, so they did that. But they tested it a lot, so I think they've honed it and made it, I honestly think, without having seen it, it's probably the best version of this particular iteration of Fantastic Four that they could have made. And I'm all about authorship. Whether it's Matt Shakman, Kevin Feige, or a combination of the two, I think Marvel works best when they have a really strong directorial hand that knows that they're working hand-in-hand with the studio. The Russo brothers certainly did on 4 movies that were all bangers. James Gunn certainly did on his 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And I think someone like Kenneth Branagh knew what the assignment was when he did Thor. Thank God they had Kenneth Branagh. We happy few. We Band of Brothers. If you've not seen his debut feature, Henry V, shame on you. What kind of a film fan are you? And then he turns around and he makes Cinderella with the great Lily James. One of the great, I'll say it, not just because Lily James is in it, one of the great Disney live-action adaptations of their animated classics. Cinderella's a terrific movie. Why? Because it was guided by somebody like Kenneth Branagh, who cut his teeth on the British stage doing what? Oh, Shakespeare. Which, by the way, made him uniquely qualified to direct Thor, which is amazing. So, that's what you want. So, let's see, where was I? One thing that Feige seemed to relish is that this new movie is mostly self-contained and is in a fully fleshed out world that doesn't require the dreaded word homework. And highlighting a 1960s aesthetic was more than just a period piece choice. No homework is required. So here's what the Hollywood Reporter learned. In a freewheeling discussion with journalists, Kevin Feige wearing a blue Fantastic Four hoodie and a Wonder Man cap, which, by the way, last year at Comic-Con, I talked to somebody in the know at Marvel who had seen some of Wonder Man and was incredibly enthusiastic about it. And Wonder Man, of course, is a key Avengers character, and I would like to see that show succeed because I always liked Wonder Man. And I'll tell you, the thing that I'm most excited about, really, to be honest, from an authorial standpoint, is Terry Matalas's upcoming Vision series. If you have not seen the 12 Monkeys TV series, it ran 4 seasons that Terry show ran. It's one of the great time travel. If you want to see how time travel works properly, because everyone knows that there's only one way that time travel can work. The 12 Monkeys TV series is not only, I think, one of the most successful adaptations of a movie, which was itself an adaptation of Chris Marker's short film La Jetée, it's an incredible science fiction TV series. And also, as everyone knows, I'm a huge fan of what Terry Matalas did with Picard Season 3, and certainly what he did with the Next Generation characters. But I think his take and understanding of science fiction concepts, unlike anybody who's currently writing Star Trek today know, I think he's going to do some really interesting things with artificial intelligence. You got Ultron coming back. Woohoo! I'm a huge Ultron fan. So I'm really excited for the Vision series. By the way, I don't know anything about it. Terry hasn't shared anything with me. He's been so closed-mouthed, and why would he? I've got a big mouth. He's smart. That's why he's a showrunner and I'm not. So, here's what the Hollywood Reporter learned. Feige knows that Marvel made too many movies and shows, and the other things they did wrong. From the first Iron Man in 2008 through Endgame in 2019, Marvel produced around 50 hours of screen storytelling. In the 6 years since Endgame, the number jumped to an astounding 102 hours of movies and television, 127 hours if you include animation. More than twice as much, with half the bang for the buck. That's too much, Feige said. He characterized the time period after Endgame as an era of experimentation, evolution, and unfortunately, expansion. And while he's proud of the experimentation, he points to the TV series WandaVision and Loki as some of the best stories they've made. He admits it's the expansion that's certainly what devalued that output. Being high on success also may have pushed Marvel to readily agree to try and deliver more programming at a time when Disney and the rest of Hollywood were engaged in the streaming wars. It was a big company push, and it doesn't take too much to push us to go, people have been asking for a Miss Marvel for years, and now we can do it, so we'll do it. Oscar Isaac wants to be Moon Knight. Do it, recalled Feige. So there was a mandate that we were put in the middle of, but we also thought it'd be fun to bring these to life. Well, I would say, yeah, it was fun. You just went with the wrong iterations of Moon Knight. You should have gone back here. In Moon Knight, you've got your romantic film noir, not that Batman isn't film noir, but you have literally a romantic version of Batman that is steeped in Egyptian lore and also real-life crime drama. You could have gone back to the Mensch Sienkiewicz run of Moon Knight. Instead, we get a ridiculous Moon Knight show where we've got Khonshu fighting another god against the Great Pyramids of Giza. And where was Moon Knight? It was a Moon Knight show that didn't have the character of Moon Knight. It had a crazy person who was bestowed with the powers of Moon Knight. It could have been a badass show. You could have had your first Daredevil-esque series, but no. The real mistake was a creative one, and people should know the difference. Marvel has already pulled back the amount of movies and shows it makes. Some years may only even have one movie. Certainly there will be years with only one TV show. Also, Marvel has started grinding down on budgets, with movies costing up to a third cheaper than the films from 2022 or 2023. Here's why Thunderbolts failed, even though it's a good movie. The massive expansion into television and focus on Disney Plus led to the feeling that watching Marvel was becoming a type of homework. It's that expansion that I think led people to say, do I have to see all of these? It used to be fun, but now do I have to know everything about all of these? And I think the Marvels hit it hardest, where people are like, okay, I recognize her from a $1 billion movie, but who are these other two? I guess they were in some TV show. I'll skip it. That's one of the reasons, but I would say that there was more than just that. This had an effect on Thunderbolts, which featured characters that were seen on various platforms, including some only appearing on shows before hitting the big screen. Some of them were still feeling the residual effects of that notion of, well, I guess I had to see these other shows to understand who this is, Feige explained. I think if you actually saw the movie, that wouldn't be the case. And we make the movie so that's not the case, but I think we still have to make the audience understand that. Feige is staying put at Marvel, for now. No Hollywood executive stays in their chair forever. Whether it's because of change at the top or a bad run of movies, change is inevitable, and a succession is a hot topic at Disney and in Hollywood in general. Feige was a bit circumspect on how long he would stay at the company, quietly admitting he has about 2 years, a little less on his contract. But regardless, he stated his desire to keep making big movies for the widest possible audience. Do I want to be making big movies for big audiences in 10 or 15 years from now? Yes, absolutely. That's all I want to do, Feige said. Marvel's a great way to do that for me right now, but I hope to make more big movies for lots of people forevermore. Feige addresses Jonathan Majors for the first time without talking about Jonathan Majors. Marvel faced several curveballs in the last few years as it worked on its post-Endgame phases. Yes, there were real-world issues of a pandemic and Hollywood strikes. There was the tragic loss of Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman. And there was the assault conviction of Jonathan Majors, the actor who was playing the villain Kang, and seemed to be teed up as the next big arch-nemesis for years to come. Feige never mentioned Majors by name, instead calling him Kang Actor at one point, or The Actor, or just zeroing in on Kang as a character. And Feige said, Marvel was already prepping to pivot away from Kang before the Majors issue. We had started, even before what had happened to the actor happened, we'd started to realize that Kang wasn't big enough, wasn't Thanos, and that there was only one character that could be that, because he was that in the comics for decades and decades, said Feige. Because of the Fox acquisition, we finally had it, and it was Doctor Doom. So we'd started talking about Doctor Doom even before we officially pivoted from Kang, and in fact, I'd started talking with Robert Downey Jr. about this audacious idea before Ant-Man 3 even came out. I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but I know that's true. It was a long plan that we had to take one of our greatest characters and utilize one of our greatest actors. Don't expect a live-action Miles Morales anytime soon. Thanks a lot, Sony. Many fans have been for years clamoring for a live-action MCU appearance of Miles Morales, the Spider-Man who headlines the acclaimed Spider-Verse movies from Sony Animation. When asked where Marvel was in the development of a live-action version of the character, Feige responded, "That's nowhere," and added that Morales' fate was in Sony's hands. Sony has their brilliant, genius, incredible Spider-Verse animated franchise going, and until that finishes, which, by the way, we've heard a release date for that, it's not going to finish until 2027. So we have quite some time. Or maybe was it 2028? I think it's 2027. We have quite some time. We've been told to stay away, says Feige. Blade is being sharpened again. Well, what's the holdup with Blade? Well, the obstacle was Ryan Coogler called and said, "We'd love some costumes for Sinners." And we said, "Take them, man. He's our good friend. Take our costumes." "We hold off on the movie," said Feige. Feige was, of course, joking, connecting Sinners to a version of Blade that was recently being developed, one that was set in a Prohibition era, just like Coogler's original hit earlier this year. Feige confirmed that there had been 4 takes of Blade that had been developed over recent times, 2 that were period, 2 that were not. Marvel has now landed on modern day, and yes, Mahershala Ali is still attached. He didn't reveal a timeline for Blade, but did say that he and Coogler have a timeline for Black Panther 3. Tonal malleability is a key to Marvel's success. Yes, there will be more R-rated stories coming. Deadpool and Wolverine, as well as the Daredevil TV show, has shown that Marvel is becoming more and more comfortable with pushing stories that are adult-oriented. But its characters can also appear in age-appropriate settings when needed. It's all a way to keep audiences interested and invested. That is how Feige pointed out you can have the Green Goblin build snowmen in Disney Plus's Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, but then kill Aunt May in Spider-Man No Way Home. Punisher is another example. The violent vigilante played by John Bernthal is the subject of a special that just began shooting last week and will air on Disney Plus next year. It's intended to be TVMA. But when the Punisher is in the Spider-Man movie, it'll be a different tonality, said Feige, confirming the character is in the next Spider-Man film. Feige still thinks the flexibility of going into production without a set script. Feige still likes the flexibility of going into production without a set script. The Marvel method of movie making has included ever-evolving scripts and heavy lifting in post-production. Striking a contrarian position, Gunn, after working at Marvel, has publicly stated that his DC studios won't begin a project without a locked script and a definite ending. Feige has never started a movie without a full script, but also added that he's never been satisfied with a script the company has had. Wow. "I've never been satisfied with the movie we've released," he even added on top of that. What he and the company like to do is plussing at every turn. There's plussing happening every day on the Avengers Doomsday set right now. And it's amazing to watch because what those filmmakers, those actors, both the ones that are playing these characters and for the first or second time and the one playing them for the 10th or 12th time are the best in the world at it and know these characters so well, said Feige. So if they have an idea, you want to listen to it and you want to adjust to it and you want to improve it. And I wouldn't want to change that. Stephen McFeely is writing the script, but Feige revealed that Loki creator Michael Waldron is also helping. Well, a lot to unpack there. Look, first of all, I'm a huge fan of the MCU. I'll flat out say it. I am surrounded by comic material that I've been reading my whole life. I've been reading Marvel and DC and every other indie under the sun, literally my whole life since I was a little kid. And I do love the comic book universes. I do love what the MCU did. And I honestly think the first 23 movies of phases 1 through 3 are an incredibly satisfying bunch of fantasy films that work amazingly well considering the disparate creators and people that made them. And I dare say that Infinity War and Endgame are the Godfather 1 and 2 of comic book movies. I mean, those movies together, you might complain about certain plot holes you perceive in Endgame, but I mean, you know, you can explain every plot hole away. I think those movies work beautifully well together, and what an incredibly satisfying 5 hours at the movies. And I am of the opinion that every movie, look, you can talk about some of my favorite movies. Marlon Brando showed up on the set of Apocalypse Now not looking the way Coppola wanted him to look, and him and Milius and everybody had to go in and rewrite the script and make it work. And while Apocalypse Now's ending is a little, I wouldn't call it muddled, maybe not as satisfying as it could be, but I think it works for that movie. But when you have a movie like Avengers Doomsday, they've hit 4 for me, 4 for 4 in the Avengers movies. I'm a huge fan. Age of Ultron has only gotten better with age. And the fact that they've brought James Spader back to play Ultron in the new Vision series, that warms my blackened, dark heart. I can't wait. But in terms of a movie like Endgame, you know, it was big, it was wild, but it worked, man. At the end of the day, that movie worked. By the time you get to the Portals theme, Mr. Silvestri's theme, and you hear Sam Wilson say "On Your Left," culminating in something that was set up during the beginning of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, this is great epic storytelling on a grand scale we've seldom seen in Hollywood from anyone. Really. I mean, it was pretty amazing what they were able to do. I think post-Endgame, the problem was it was too willy-nilly. If I were Kevin Feige, if someone asked me, I would have said, okay, what you need to do is what they did with the Bond franchise after Moonraker. You know, you go into outer space, what do? Well, you pull it back, and you go back to the basics of a spy thriller, and you get For Your Eyes Only. It's surprising to me. I understand that they chose to make a Black Widow movie, which I think has also gotten better with age. It's just the big, ridiculous ending that they had to put in there or whatever. But I think the problem was if they had focused again and gone back, I know it becomes a money issue. But in the long run, by not doing the right thing, they lost a lot more money than they would have made if they made a smaller movie like an Ant-Man as your first film as part of Phase 4. Take whatever character you want, but start small and do what you did with Iron Man 1. Make a great, satisfying story about one character going through a personal crisis and make it great. And use Iron Man 1 as the example and then rebuild from there. I never understood why they didn't do that. Or you start with characters like the Eternals, you bring in the Cosmic Celestials, which people will buy into, and you give us a story that's going to take us through the Marvel world in a different direction, and then we could meet up. The Eternals could have told us a different faction, or not faction's the wrong word, a different part of the story of the Marvel Universe that we didn't know yet. Maybe we could have seen and build that way. But it was so willy-nilly and haphazard. It's like, okay, how do the Eternals fit into any of this? Like Kevin Feige said, the problem wasn't, you can make people wonder and you can make it work, but that film just felt, and I really like the Eternals. The more I watch it, I really like the film, so sue me. The problem is, you guys made 23, 24, 25, whatever, movies before we got to the Eternals, and you set up an expectation with the audience that you're not fulfilling. What you guys did, your own success set up expectations that you no longer fulfilled because you weren't putting in the time that you used to put in with these other films, with your story group or whatever. And by the time, why did somebody decide to take those 2 lovely Ant-Man movies and turn the third one into Quantum Mania? I mean, that movie had things in it that completely destroyed, my favorite word, destroyed verisimilitude for the entire MCU. I mean, suddenly we're in an entirely different realm. The beauty of the MCU for me, the thing that I've talked about on this show all the time, is the fact, the genius of what the MCU did that no one seems to talk about, is the fact you made us believe that Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America could exist in the same universe. That was the thing that I was always most incredulous about when this whole experiment started in 2008. And remember, Iron Man 1 also didn't have a finished script. It was very iterative as they went along. But they made us believe, man. And if you believe that those three characters could come together in the same timeline, in the same place, you have a universe. And if it didn't work, you wouldn't have got Avengers making $1.5 billion. But it did work because of the thought put behind it and all the getting Joe Johnston to direct Captain America, the First Avenger. I mean, I know that maybe he didn't work so well with Marvel, or he did because he brought that Rocketeer vibe. And it was it was genius for Kevin Feige to hire Joe Johnston to direct Captain America, the First Avenger, because they wanted that Rocketeer vibe, and they got it. Is Captain America the greatest movie in the world? No, but it certainly is a great introduction to Steve Rogers and to the character of Captain America and the actor that's become a legend playing him. And these are things that I think were forgotten. Like, I don't understand why they decided to make the version of Moon Knight that they made. I wouldn't have gone that way. It was a little weird, and they couldn't decide what they wanted to do. And you made a Moon Knight series with very little Moon Knight. I mean, it would have been, and then you're focusing on these Egyptian gods, and you're like, what? How do these Egyptian gods fit in with the rest of the MCU? When Thanos came, did he know those Egyptian gods were there? It just didn't make a lick of sense. And one of the things about the Eternals was the fact that they wanted to change the whole idea of the deviants. And you're watching this going, these deviants, you've got the Eternals and the deviants on Earth, and no one knew they were there. They've been dormant for how long? It just, the idea of the Eternals and the deviants was a little weird. It didn't really work. But if the Eternals were on Earth to shepherd life, that could have been interesting. They're sort of the caretakers of the rest of the MCU. What can you do? I just didn't think it was particularly well handled. It's interesting to listen to Kevin Feige talk, though, because while he says interesting things, they're never as thoughtful. You know he's much more thoughtful than that, but because of who he is, he has to say very close. He's very closely guarded and close to the vest. And it's frustrating listening to him talk because I never feel that we're hearing what he really wants to say. I mean, the man, he's already the most successful. I get throttled like this. Maybe they just don't like what I'm saying. Maybe I'm trying to be squelched by YouTube. But anyway, we should be back. It's a strange thing. But I stopped for a minute, so I don't think let me see what you guys are saying. I know that people have fired in some super chats, and I will check out what you guys have to say. So let's see what people are talking about. Just Captain. Captain says, oh, man after my own heart. For a $20 super chat says, I hate Strange New Worlds with a deep-seated passion from beyond hell. After watching the 2 new episodes, especially the second one, I simply took my own fist and punched myself in the face a few times to feel better. You know, Kevin Feige loves Star Trek. It's what's so, to me, what's so galling about Strange New Worlds? Here's what's galling. You've got fine production design, you've got a great cast of actors. And yet, you have a writing staff that's incapable of writing any interesting science fiction. They're incapable of writing Spock. They completely misunderstand Spock, and you have a great actor in Ethan Peck that can deliver some amazing work. And you think that Spock is some like mental. They're using Spock as he's basically Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. It's so frustrating. It's like, well, he's not the Spock that you all know. It's like, no, motherfuckers. Spock was already Spock when he came on the Enterprise. He had a human mother. He went through Starfleet. He's not fucking Data. He's a man of both worlds who has to be the master of both worlds. He's really the best human being you've ever met, even though, I mean, it's not like he has emotions. He just controls them like all Vulcans do through the teachings of Cermak. And he's also a great human being. But he also, again, he's maintaining control of his emotions. He's the best of both worlds, but he's caught between the two of them. So he can't be one or the other because he's split down the middle. And that's what makes him interesting. He's not dumb. He knows exactly what's up. If you watch the original series, Spock knew exactly what a joke was. And he could give as well as he received. It's just that, you know, when Saavik says humor, it is a difficult concept. It is not logical in Star Trek II. Spock knows all about humor. But in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they treat him like some kind of a puppy. And a sex object. This predilection of Spock's romantic relationship that carries over from episode to episode. I mean, these people are all Whedonites. They all think Buffy and Angel and Firefly are the greatest TV shows ever made. Maybe they will. Maybe they are. But you know what the people that write Star Trek should watch? Especially Strange New Worlds? Fucking the original series. And anytime you come up with an idea or you see a character in the original series, move away from that. Since you asked me about this, and I spent 3 years of my life making documentaries about the making of Next Generation and Enterprise, and you can see those on the Blu-rays. One of the things when they were going to make Star Trek The Next Generation is they said, they had a mandate that, okay, you had DeForest Kelley in the pilot and Encounter Farpoint, and then you had The Naked Now, which is a terrible John D.F. Black scripted sequel to The Naked Time from the original series. But they basically said, hands off the original series. Okay, they brought the Romulans back, yes. They had a really interesting Klingon episode because Worf is a Klingon. But they developed the Klingon culture in really interesting ways that we'd never seen in the original series, which was interesting. But they really didn't have a direct tie to the original series until the third season of Next Generation with a beautiful episode that Peter S. Beagle wrote the story for called Sarek, where they brought Mark Leonard back to play his father, Spock's father, Sarek. And in it, he was suffering from Bendy syndrome, which is basically Vulcan Alzheimer's. And it was a wonderful story. And Ira Stephen Bear, who later went on to do such beautiful work on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Ira Bear had to beg Rick Berman that when Picard and Sarek, their minds were linked, that he could use the word Spock. He got to say one Spock. That's all they got. Because they wanted to keep their own identity. Strange New Worlds is, of course, a prequel to the original series, supposedly, but it's really not. None of the timeline works out. But they have rated so many episodes of Star Trek, and badly, I might add. What they did to Balance of Terror on Strange New Worlds. Balance of Terror is one of the great first season episodes. It introduces the Romulans into Star Trek canon. They basically gave us a replay of it on Strange New Worlds. First of all, why would you do that? Unless you could do it better, which you didn't. Anson Mount's a great actor, but apparently he has to talk to all the ladies on the bridge before he can make a decision. Nothing wrong with asking your crew, but I mean the guy is not really a captain. He's a great actor and he's been given nothing to do. But I won't make this. But as with you, Captain, by the way, I'm not seeing. Let me look at your whole name because I couldn't see your whole name. It's being covered up, which is kind of a bummer. Let's see. I still can't see it. I don't know why. I can't see it. Well, we'll see. But the Captain, you're correct. Mark Spector said, I saw the film The Reddit Spoilers Are True. You're talking about Fantastic Four? I guess they are. I haven't read the Reddit spoilers, so I don't know what the Reddit spoilers said. A World in Pajamas, Tracy, says, I hope you're well. I can't stay long. I've got to get up early in the morning, but I wanted to send you my best wishes for Comic-Con. Good luck. Comic-Con is always fun. This week, I've got panels, so check in on those. Jim Wateri has sent 10 Burnettwork gift memberships out. That's very nice of you. Thank you so much. We might have a member call this coming Saturday. I'm not sure yet because Comic-Con is in the mix and Elizabeth's birthday is on Saturday. Sinkfield Hoops says, I think they didn't do that after Endgame because the Russos killing Tony and Cap threw them off. I have an idea of exactly how they could have done it. Yeah, I think there were probably a lot of ideas about how they could have done it. But I just think they went the wrong way. By the way, it's Captain J.T. Kirk. Captain J.T. Kirk, you always are there on the member calls, but I've never seen you. But you and I clearly are birds of a feather. So, Jim Wateri, thank you for that, by the way. Singfield Hoops, I would love to hear how you would have done it. Mark Spector's Avatar says, honestly, they should have listened to Jon Favreau and not killed off Iron Man. I'm going to see the Avengers films, but I don't think they'll do $1 billion, even with Robert Downey Jr. being the villain. Yeah, because they're gimmicky. Look, the whole thing comes down to story. And the thing that made Infinity War and Endgame so exciting is that you had all of the movies. You had, 18 movies before you get to Infinity War? So Infinity War was 19. Then you had Ant-Man and Captain Marvel as 20 and 21. Endgame was 22, and then Far From Home was 23, and that's the end of Phase 3. That was an amazing thing to build up all those characters. And if you think about it, Thor had a trilogy, Iron Man had a trilogy, Captain America had a trilogy, 3 sub-trilogies within this big storyline. And then you had your individual films. I even enjoyed Captain Marvel. I know a lot of people like to hate on it, but I enjoyed it. When I saw it, I loved Ant-Man. And so you're leading up to this, and then you got the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The third one came in the next phases, but still. I mean, that was a tremendous group of movies with all different kinds of tones and feelings, and it all worked. And, and you did things like you introduce Black Panther and T'Challa and the Dora Milaje and Wakanda. You introduce all of that in Civil War, and then you pay it off with Black Panther. So carefully constructed. And with the first of all, the multiverse saga, none of it, where are we at? No one even knows who's in the Avengers. We know that the Thunderbolts are fighting Sam Wilson's Avengers team for the right for the Avengers name. I mean, we haven't even seen that battle, and we're going to jump right into a new Avengers movie. And I'm like, okay, well, who are we following, and why should we care? And you've made Loki the king of stories, like he's controlling the strings of the whole multiverse, so he's the new MacGuffin they're going to go after. I don't know. There's nothing I can anticipate other than Robert Downey Jr. being Doctor Doom. The problem with that is it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. And we've got Spider-Man. Maybe in Spider-Man Brand New Day they can do something, but the problem with the MCU is there's no anticipation anymore. We couldn't wait to see Avengers Civil War. Or, pardon me, Captain America Civil War, Avengers 2.0, 2.5. We couldn't wait to see those movies. We couldn't wait to see Infinity War. And we could not wait to see Endgame. Because all of these characters we cared about. We've been thinking about them for over a decade. I mean, Iron Man 1 came out in 2008. Endgame came out in 2019. That's a long time to build up your audience. That's an incredible thing. We don't have that. I mean, people are like, yeah, I'll go see Avengers Doomsday. I'll go see it, but you're going to give me a gimmick. And I don't know. They have to, in order for Avengers Endgame to work, or pardon me, let me get this straight. My head is filled. In order to make Avengers Doomsday work, every audience member that goes to see that movie is going to be asking themselves, how are you possibly going to make me believe that Robert Downey Jr., the actor, is in fact Victor Von Doom? And are you going to tie it in? Is the Tony Stark that we've seen before not really Tony Stark with a baby switched at birth or some other bullshit? I mean, maybe they'll do that. To be honest, I have no idea how they're going to do it. But how are they going to do it and not make it a gimmick? If they really do it well. And when I hear that they're on the set of Doomsday and it's all very iterative and actors are plussing things, I'm like, oh, great. We don't even have Marcus and McFeely. We've only got one of them. One half of that writing duo, who also wrote the Narnia movies for Disney. Actually, the first movie was not Disney. But actually it was. What am I saying? Never mind. It's a different thing. Different lifetime. But it's a gimmick, and we all know it's a gimmick. And the audience is going to be walking into that going, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of... I really love Thunderbolts, but a lot of people stayed away. It was kind of a smaller film. But why am I supposed to get excited about Avengers Doomsday? And I say this is almost a rhetorical question, but in a way, why? I don't know who the Avengers are. I don't know who am I rooting to see again. We've heard Sam Wilson has a new Avengers team. Maybe now that they've got Spider-Man coming out before that, or we're going to see Wonder Man, the Wonder Man series. They're probably not going to address it because it was made last year. Why are we going to get excited? And I'll tell you this, Fantastic Four does not answer these questions. It does not. And it doesn't even address them. And that was probably smart for Fantastic Four. But it's like we're going into an Avengers Doomsday movie where part of the time is going to be taken up explaining who Doctor Doom is. And maybe we should have had a Doctor Doom. Maybe they're secretly making a Doctor Doom movie that's going to come out and give us this backstory. Because the movie's so iterative, it might be like when they were making The Hobbit, when Peter Jackson was doing The Hobbit. They're like, hey, we have enough material here for a third movie. Why don't we just release the Doctor Doom origin story? I don't know. I mean, killing Iron Man and killing Captain America is not a problem. I don't understand why Steve Rogers has not come back in some kind of a advisory capacity, because he's still alive. He's just an old man now. Sinkfield Hoops says, I have a video on the works of how Marvel's biggest mistake was killing Tony in Endgame. You can keep old Cap because there's stories involving him. Yeah, I don't necessarily. Look, the thing about killing Tony in Endgame is it gives you the satisfying conclusion that movie needed. And you can't keep paying Robert Downey Jr. that much money, although they ended up doing so in Doomsday. But it worked really, really. It worked when he says, I'm Iron Man, and snaps his finger. And it gives that movie an emotional wallop like no other fantasy film I think I've ever seen. In particularly a comic book movie that gives you that kind killing. Look, it's easy to say you can't kill Tony Stark, but the fact is, if you don't kill Tony Stark, you don't get the emotional power that Endgame had. I don't want to change that. Sinkfield Hoops says Eternals should have been a TV show for sure. No, it should have been a better written movie. Because it had a grand scope and a grand scale, and they should have made it. The writing, the script needed to be better. Kenneth Colton says, if I keep bothering Bob on the socials, he might get a restraining order. The Foundation Season 3 is so good. Weapons tickets are on sale this week, and I got that $80 Galactus popcorn bucket ready for Thursday. All right. Yeah, I want that Galactus popcorn bucket. Foundation Season 3 it's better than Season 2. It's fantastic television. And you know what? Maybe the people that write Star Trek should look at fucking Foundation, but it's probably beyond their comprehension. Jesus Christ. Nova Star sends in a super chat and says, as the biggest Invisible Woman fan for over 29 years since I was 3 years old, this is the best possible week I can have, and love your show, Rob. I really appreciate your perspective. Well, thank you for that. I very much appreciate that. Look, I think the great thing about the Fantastic Four movie is that we're going to get a fully realized story that is going to give us what we want. A simple story. I don't know if it's a spoiler, if it's come out, that the movie opens when the Fantastic Four have been the Fantastic Four for 4 years. And as you might guess from the trailers, you can probably figure out how they're going to explain all of this, because they show you in the trailer there's a TV show. It's an anniversary TV show, so it brings us up to speed. And from what I've heard, and I asked not to be spoiled, the way they do that and bring us up to speed is going to put a smile on every comic book fan's face. And then by the end of the movie, another 4 years have gone by. Somehow. That's all I know. But that's I love that idea. I think that's fantastic. And we stay in that world, and we get to have a fully realized story in that world that is satisfying, which I think is fantastic. So Nova Star, I think you're going to be satisfied. And everyone has said, universally, that even Pedro Pascal, my friend who was the most cynical about it, said, you know what? He is Reed Richards. And I'm still not convinced. I'll have to see it myself, but I hope so. But everybody else looks great, and I've heard that people love it. Captain J.T. Kirk says, I believe Roddenberry himself said Trelane was not related to Q as a species. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I believe that he said that, though. But, you know, Peter David did a wonderful job in his book Q Squared. Q Squared is a great... Here's another thing about modern Star Trek. I understand that people in Hollywood think they shouldn't read tie-in novels, or they don't have to read tie-in novels. But of all the franchises that have inspired great writing, the Star Trek franchise has a number of novels that I think that and by the way, I would be happy to consult and tell you which ones to read. Any of you Star Trek writers out there, if Star Trek will ever make it back onto TV after what they do with Starfleet Academy. But anyway, because all of these ideas have been covered. The same is true of Star Wars. I mean, and what the IP owners of Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, what they're all fighting against is these stories. The people that write novels have spent, the best novels, have spent a lot more time thinking about your IP, and comic book writers too, like the Tipton brothers writing Star Trek comics. They've spent a lot more time thinking about your IP than any writers you're going to hire from Hollywood. They have. And the people that are writing Star Trek novels also read a lot of Star Trek, the technical manuals, and they read a lot of science fiction growing up. So the best Star Trek novels are, a lot of them, people like Greg Bear, one of my favorite science fiction writers, wrote a Star Trek novel called Corona back in the 80s, and then went on to become one of the most influential science fiction writers of the last 40 years. These are the people that were writing these Star Trek novels. So when you're watching swill like Strange New Worlds, you're watching Star Trek stories. You know what? I threw out a chat GPT premise about Spock. It spit back to me a better storyline than anything that we've seen on Strange New Worlds, which is funny because the one place where that show falls down for me is the writing. It's god-awful. It's terrible science fiction. It's terrible Star Trek. And I watch it and I think, wow, this should be... And everyone's like, I like it. No. The people that love it... I'll tell you something. Since we're talking about it, I'll say it right now. Y'all love Galaxy Quest, right? It's great, right? It's fun. Funny movie. Really well done. It's smart. The one thing about Galaxy Quest that always bugged me, and it explains why Strange New Worlds is such a shitty TV show. The actual in-universe Galaxy Quest show that everyone's a fan of, when they show you clips by Grapthor's Hammer, the show Galaxy Quest in the movie is basically not much better than a Saturday morning TV show. Nothing explains why modern Star Trek, especially things like Discovery and Strange New Worlds, are as bad as they are. That, in Galaxy Quest, explains it all, because they don't look at the original Star Trek as a good show. All they see is this campy, old-fashioned 1960s show. And their mentality is, like so many other writers today, we're going to come in and fix it. We're going to come in and make it better. And so they don't take Star Trek seriously. And I understand it's a little hard to when you see some of those episodes. But that attitude doesn't allow them to see the greatness in Star Trek when it's right in front of them. And this is a quintessential problem with a lot of writing today. You can't go into writing something. You can't go into writing a legacy IP and think that that IP is beneath you. And this is the problem. This is the problem with Star Wars. It's the problem with Doctor Who. It's the problem with Star Trek. These writers do not approach... And when you get something that's good like Andor, you have a great Academy Award caliber writer in Tony Gilroy who understands that Star Wars, like great science fiction or science fantasy or fantasy in general, is allegorical. And he's like, I'm gonna dig more into the war side of it all. So I've been studying resistance and societies and politics my whole career, and I'm going to take everything I know about warfare and subterfuge and empires fighting, and I'm going to put it into the context of a science fiction show, which is what all great writers do that deal with fantasy IPs that are really successful and timeless, like The Twilight Zone, like Star Trek, like The Prisoner. That's why they work. And the same is true of superhero shows. Superhero shows or superhero comics, the best ones, are retellings of classic myths that inject a lot of classical storytelling into them. And the best comic book writing are written by people that have an understanding of the great stories of the days of yore. That's why they're good. The problem is the people writing now have only ever watched fucking TV. And movies, some movies. Not a lot of the great movies. They haven't gone back to watch the great movies. If you ask a writer who Patty Chayefsky even is. Who? I mean, I have a letter I'm going to read later about David Mamet. People are like, why should I learn about David Mamet? Well, I don't know. The question you should be asking yourself is, why haven't you learned about David Mamet? Why haven't you read the Foundation trilogy? Why are you writing science fiction if you don't read science fiction, which as a genre comes from the pages of books, not from TV shows that are the most dumbed down version of science fiction ever? Why don't you just pick up Werner Vinci's A Fire Upon the Deep? How about read that? How about read Dan Simmons' Hyperion? How about read Peter Watt's Blindsight, books I talk about all the time? There's 10 books I can give you. You'd be much smarter and you could write much better Star Trek if you read these books. Who's going to read books anyway? You're going to listen to books on tape at the fucking gym. Fucking terrible shows. Wraith X7 says, Rob, you should get in touch with the Bat and the Sun people and make a Moon Knight fan film that is faithful to the OG version of Moon Knight to show Marvel how to do it. I respect that. I will never work on a fan film ever again. For other reasons that you can find in my history if you want. I look forward to everybody using AI to make fan films. I will never make another one. Mikey Lito, our friend Mikey Lito says, I love you, man. I'll see you soon, God willing. And Mikey Lito's been a member for 42 months. Now, Mikey Lito is a great man, and he's also a great film watcher. He brings great critical acumen because he's smart. He's lived a life. You know, one day I got to get drunk with Mikey Lito. I got to go back east. I got to meet you all. Kalon J, they need DS3 to help. Is that DS3? Is I don't quite recognize that right away. Is that a new iteration of like Grok 4? I don't know. DBZ Now says, I think Feige debunking Gunn's comments on how they film movies, but then right after saying they're reworking the Avengers Doomsday film during production is quite contradictory in my eyes. Look, I think it is too. At least, I mean, the way he talks about it, and it's one thing, if actors, like one of the things I love about actors on set, even in the one movie I've directed, actors always brought something, and I'd be like, oh, we're using that. Because actors can do things in the moment if they truly understand a script. If an actor is a truly gifted actor, they also are gifted readers, and they understand storytelling innately, instinctively. And if they know their character, they can go off book. They're not thinking about what they have to say. They know their character. They can say their lines, but they can add something to it. And if you see something like that, it works. You know, it's like Harrison Ford, the classic, you'll all know this one, in Empire Strikes Back. I love you. I know. That's one of the great ad-libs of all time. And the thing is, it's in character. It made the scene better. You know, and there's a lot of those things. There's a lot of single lines that become famous that we love. Now, that's great, but I don't want a story as complex as Avengers Doomsday to be rewritten on the set, because what ends up happening is actors do not have the entire story in their heads the way a good director does. And you've got the Russo brothers, maybe they do, but actors are thinking about their scenes in the moment. But when you have as many actors on set as they do for Avengers Doomsday, and you get everybody ad-libbing, and you have a caucus of people telling you what to do, I don't know how to keep that in my head. You got to have a pretty goddamn strong script or an outline to make sure it works. And you can't, no amount of money is going to make that movie better. So, Sinkfield Hoop says, to be fair, they explained who Thanos was even after all the buildup. Yeah, they did. Because they're continually building him up. And when you get to, we'd never seen Thanos in a scene before. And that's one of the genius things about Infinity War and Endgame. You've seen the destruction of Asgard. Then you see these Asgardian ships, and there's the Black Order, and then you see, you know, you've got Ebony Maw going, and then Thanos kills Loki and defeats the Hulk. That's how you open a movie with your villain. Now, they could do something along those lines with Doctor Doom in the movie, and they probably will, and you'll get some kind of, but there's been no build-up. There's no, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. There's none of that. And we'll see. And remember, Loki was in cahoots with Thanos all the way back to Avengers 1. So there was lots of setup and stuff. So, yeah. Jim Terry says, are you going to go to the Project Hail Mary panel in Hall H on Sunday or on Saturday? I don't know. I already saw that team of guys at CinemaCon, and they showed us 8 minutes of the movie. I really hope they show you the same 8 minutes that they showed us, because the tone of it's right. The goofy tone of the trailer they released is not the movie. It's not the book. So, yeah. B-Town says, do you think we will see Doom before Avengers in the Fantastic Four post-credits scene? Maybe. I mean, but I would imagine this. Let's say you do. I don't think it's going to say much about Avengers Doomsday. I don't think that it's going to... I don't at all. So, yeah, if that makes any sense. Alexander Wilson, you know what? I was thinking about you, Alexander, because I did not go to my 40th high school reunion. And you know who was there? That's right, Quinn Snyder. And if I was there, I could have interviewed him. I was going to get him a video. I couldn't make it. I couldn't get there. But I thought about you. I would have got that. Feige, I don't know what Feige said about the X-Men because I didn't read that article. I read the article that was in Hollywood Reporter. Maybe I'll go back to the Deadline article and read that and see what he says. That's a good idea. Nathan Kiddo says, did you see Justin's review of the In-Art Superman? I did, and it looks fantastic. What a great figure. Really great. Hoop Baby 07 says, show us your new favorite hot toy. You know what? The last hot toy I got was Michael Keaton from The Flash, but it's I'm in no place to get there. I mean, the things that I have in you know what figure I really like? It's not a hot toy. It's So Toys Old Man Logan. It's been here for a long time. What's funny is when I got this, it was not from Deadpool and Wolverine. But because they gave him Hugh Jackman's face, it is. So I'm glad I picked this up. It's even got Hulkling in the backpack. So, but it's great. And of course, I do like as much as I dislike Moon Knight. Here's another So toy. Hot Toys is making this, but their version isn't out. The Mr. Knight figure. Love that figure. It's good. So anyway, Captain J.T. Kirk says, Strange New Worlds is that cracker Eddie Murphy was talking about. At the end of the day, it's just a plain old cracker. Amen. Well, it's so frustrating because when you turn around and you watch something like Andor or Foundation Season 3 or Black Mirror or Sex, Death, and Robots or all of the great science fiction you can find on TV, Silo, Paradise... There's so much great science fiction. To see Star Trek in the Vegas show version of Star Trek that is dumbed down. It's so frustrating. Star Trek should be the most thoughtful, most emotional, most intellectually compelling show on television. Instead, we're getting a show where Nurse Chapel and Spock, their little relationship is like, why are we spending time watching it? And also... the great thing about the original series is that they had an unrequited love. Nurse Chapel was in love with Spock, and Spock could never return it, but not in this show. Because the dumbass writers want to make it about a romance because they'll fill in... They would much rather be writing these romantic stories because it's fucking Buffy. Who's gonna stupoo? It's a science fiction action adventure allegorical show. And you're giving us this swill? You're wasting these actors? And you know what? The rest of this season, from what I've heard, is not much better than the first 2 episodes that we've got. They ruined the Gorn. They ruined Spock. They ruined Chapel. They ruined... I mean, first of all, half the characters in that show. Wouldn't you want to create your own characters? Where's Dr. Boyce? If you're watching The Cage, one of the great scenes in that episode is when Dr. Boyce, the old grizzled white doctor... I don't want to make it about race, but they clearly didn't want him. And yet he's got the greatest scene with Pike. But oh no... we're going to just steal. We've got Christine Chapel. We've got Lieutenant Uhura. We've got Dr. Mbenga. Now we've got Scotty. We've got Kirk. and Dr. Corby and Trelane and Q and like let's just steal everybody from every other show that we didn't create. Why aren't they creating their own? Why aren't they adding to the Star Trek pantheon? Why are you bogarting everybody else's work and destroying what they did and making their work less good? Because your work sucks. God, it's so... And they're getting paid for it. Christ. Terrible. Kalon J says Doctor Strange 3 would build hype for Doomsday. I don't understand why. I mean, Doctor Strange can at least get you onto the Avengers lunchbox in Multiverse of Madness, and that movie made over $900 million. Where's another... Everyone loves Doctor Strange. Where is that? Sinkfield Hoop says, I just think it's unfair to criticize the no build-up when they had to pivot. It'd be totally different if they had the intentions of him starting out. Hey, I agree, but even if they had to pivot, they can still do something. You know, they can still do something maybe in Thunderbolts, maybe in Brave New World. I mean, Brave New World was a complete mess. They could have done something there, but, you know, who knows? BA says, but I think you're right, but yeah, they had to pivot, but that's no excuse. They shouldn't have had to pivot. I mean, Jonathan Majors notwithstanding, the build-up to Kang was terrible, too. It wasn't good. They didn't introduce that character well, and to make him such a big part of Quantum Mania, the big mistake they made, to me, in my mind, was they wasted opportunities with Thor, Love, and Thunder and Quantum Mania. They went totally off the reservation with those. They were way too... Thor, Love, and Thunder could have been an incredibly hard-hitting return to form. If you had Kenneth Branagh direct that, I mean, Gore the God Butcher could have been this unbelievable villain. But that movie is so goofy, it's so inconsequential. I hated that movie. That might be my most hated Marvel movie. That and Quantumania together. Because they completely squandered any goodwill and verisimilitude they built up for their universe. Wow, there's a lot. I haven't even gotten to this. You guys have some great commentary today. This is great stuff. BA says, Robert Downey Jr. definitely can play Doom, but do you think his older, more frail Robert Downey Jr. can still put on the Iron Man suit? It feels inevitable. You know, I don't think... Here's the thing. I don't think the Marvel Universe would be at all beneficial or be benefited by Iron Man returning. You know, I think that his death in Endgame stands as a legitimate... Same with the death of Natasha, a legitimate pivot point, because you're telling a story over the course of, I mean, let's face it, we're going to wind up with more than 50 Marvel movies, probably before Kevin Feige leaves. I think, was Thunderbolts 37? You know, and that's a lot. That doesn't even include the TV shows. And I think having somebody like Iron Man die it adds to the overall franchise, because you can't make those movies forever, I don't think. And what's so cool is seeing these characters age and change makes you got to make single movies that are standalone that are great. But isn't it cool that we have this long ongoing story? One of the great things, look, not to bring it all back to Star Trek, but one of the great things about Star Trek was when they made the decision to make Star Trek the motion picture and bring back the original TV cast, and for a movie that was that expensive, that was insane. But when they did that cast's aging, they made the great decision to incorporate it into the story. Kirk being older, he's been behind a desk for 2.5 years. You know, Spock went off on his trip. McCoy went off to study Fabrini medicine, you know, from The World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. And then in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, bringing the whole idea of mortality in. And by the time you get to Star Trek VI, Spock and Kirk are talking about, are we so old and that we've outlived our usefulness? That was brilliant. And how many other pop culture mainstays go from 1966, Kirk died in Generations in 94. Spock actually didn't die, well, an argument could be made, but didn't die until the third J.J. Abrams movie. Off camera, of course, but that's if you think about that, pop culture characters that are allowed to inhabit these characters and grow old. The fact that Hugh Jackman is still playing Wolverine. And when I say that, I don't know if he's in Avengers Endgame, but he must be. How do you bring back the X-Men? I know he's not their X-Men, but there's some iteration of the X-Men. How do you not bring him back? I would imagine I'm willing to bet $5 right now that Hugh Jackman comes back in Avengers Endgame or Doomsday, whatever, Doomsday. Doesn't he? I mean, you got the X-Men in there. Why wouldn't you bring him back? But JM says, is that a Giger alien head at your right elbow? Yes. This is Pearl. Pearl is a 1-to-1 scale alien head. There's no way that I could be sitting here and pick it up because it weighs about 50 pounds. It's about this big, a bust. I moved Pearl down here when Romulus was coming out. She's a little dusty, to be honest. I got to dust her off. Oh, she's a little dusty right here, you know. But yes, I bought this like 20 years ago, and I love it, but I have to move it. All the stuff behind me has been gathering. I had to clean this all up. But yes, it's nice of you to notice. That's Pearl. She was named Pearl by viewers on this channel. So Royston S. Bailey says, if you could show all high schoolers in the U.S. one episode... Ooh, this is a great question. If you could show all high schoolers in the U.S. one episode from Star Trek the original series and one from Star Trek Next Generation, which ones would you choose? Ooh, okay. If you're going to hold me to this, I would show from the original series, I would show Balance of Terror. I want to give you one from each season, but that's from the first season. It's the very first Romulan episode, and there's stuff about prejudice, there's stuff about duty, there's stuff about responsibility. If you've never seen Star Trek before, Balance of Terror does a really good job of establishing, especially its high school students, and it moves fast. They're not going to be bored, and I think they're going to understand what's going on. And in terms of Star Trek The Next Generation, you know, there's a lot of people say, "Oh, well, we got to show them Yesterday's Enterprise." No, because Yesterday's Enterprise, you have to know the cast, you have to know everybody. I would show them the Drumhead, especially today. The Drumhead with Gene Simmons playing Admiral Satie. The Drumhead is an episode that they're going to get, that they're going to understand. So that's my two choices. The original series, Balance of Terror, and Next Generation, The Drumhead. I think those are two episodes that are timeless, and they're probably even more relevant today. That's a great question. Hoop Baby 07. Is it just me, or is it because Quinn Snyder was at my 40th reunion? There's a lot of basketball fans in the chat today. Will we get a Dark Angel series or movie? Is James gatekeeping? I don't know, man. I just think Dark Angel, I think that ship has sailed. I mean, you never know. They're bringing everything back. If you told me that there was an Automan or a Manimal series in production, I'd be like, of course there is, because why not? But Dark Angel, I don't know. I think James Cameron, do you know what James Cameron's doing? Like, okay, he's finished. He's making a 3D Billie Eilish concert film. Did you read this? You read about this? James Cameron, which, by the way, I think is pretty dope. I like Billie Eilish a lot. Billie Eilish and Phineas are true talents. And a 3D Billie Eilish concert film, bring that shit on, son. That's a great thing for James Cameron to do. A little palate cleanser before jumping into Avatar 4. Why not? Sinkfield Hoop says, agreed, but wouldn't that have created more reshoots that would have made things look worse with scheduling and delays? I totally agree, though. Kang equals badass. Look, Jonathan Majors, I just think they botched Kang. The idea of the multiverse was not thought through. I don't even know the rules of the multiverse. I mean, we kind of saw it in Loki, which to me got a little convoluted. I understand where they were going. I think the worst thing the Marvel Cinematic Universe ever did was introduce the TVA. Because the TVA, it is this Brazil-like, corporate-looking... It's a satire already. And I don't think the Marvel Cinematic Universe needed the TVA. I think that became unnecessary. It convoluted it all. I don't believe the TVA. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it in the universe. Give me the Infinity Stones. Give me Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. I'll believe anything you want to. I thought the TVA was a bridge too far. I thought that was a huge mistake, and I don't think anything derailed the Marvel Cinematic Universe more than the introduction of the TVA, because it is, at its core, inherently goofy. And it is, every time you use it, it destroys the verisimilitude of the universe. Now, they could have brought Loki. They could have figured out a way to show us the different universes, the Void, whatever. They could have done that, but the TVA, I think, was a huge mistake. Matt Murphy says, I love the shirt. Probably the only movie good enough to make me ignore Baldwin as a personality. Not sure if you've seen Red Belt. It is the one Mamet movie I find myself coming back to again and again. That said, I still believe that the local paper's masthead on State and Maine stating, shall not bear false witness, might be the most cogent commentary on what's wrong with society today. Man, you said it. We now live in a world where people are only bearing false witness, and it is a bummer. Thanks for noticing the shirt. Look, Alec Baldwin, he's great in Glengarry Glen Ross, and of course, as Jack Ryan. One ping only, please. Thanks for noticing that. I hadn't worn this in a long time. Captain J.T. Kirk says, Rob, you and I are of a kind. In a different reality, I could have called you friend. My classic Star Trek friend. See, there's some great writing in season 3 of Foundation, but the end of Balance of Terror has this line that Mark Leonard says, and the end of, if you watch what they did in Strange New Worlds to Balance of Terror, they thought they were being clever. We're going to shoot it in a different aspect ratio. If they were really clever, they would have gone 4:3 with it. But hey, we're going to shoot it in a different aspect ratio. They totally ruined their Romulan characters, which is of course they did. Because I bet it's probably the cinematographer that watched the episode, not the writers. But, Matt Murphy said, that said, I still... Oh, that's... Okay, that was already read that. That was part of your thing. And you're absolutely right. Caney Game Center. Is that Caney Game Center? Says, love to see you, Rob. You're the best. Now, Alexander Wilson asked about... if I'd read what Kevin Feige said about the X-Men. We're going to get to that. I want to read this second article that I thought was pretty cool. Now, this second article comes from Deadline. And let me jump into it. And this article comes from Deadline, and Natalie, now I've gotten, it's the reader has, because I've had it up too long, it's summarized it. But anyway, Natalie Aganasayan, I don't know if that's right, but let's read it. Again, this comes from Deadline. Spider-Man is likely to start from scratch in the forthcoming Forquel, Spider-Man Brand New Day, and it looks like the MCU franchise itself will also go back to the beginning in terms of its movie-making approach. Teasing the upcoming installment for the first time with YouTube series Flip Your Wig, star Tom Holland said... the web slinger's next appearance would offer viewers a breath of fresh air. Quote, he says, I'm obviously over the moon and so excited, he said, of reprising Peter Parker, now unknown to his loved ones following the dramatic conclusion of Spider-Man No Way Home. Playing Spider-Man is like hanging out with an old pal. And I think we were just really restricted with what we could do in the last movie because of COVID. We shot the entire film on stages. He continued, now we're really going to lean into that old school filmmaking and shoot in real locations, which is why we're starting in Glasgow, and we're going to use the streets of Glasgow to build this massive set piece that we're putting together, so it's going to feel like making Spider-Man 1 again. It's been such a long time since I've done it, it's going to feel like a breath of fresh air, and I think the fans are going to be over the moon with what we're putting together. That's very cool. No Way Home, released in 2021, kicks off immediately following the events of 2019 Spider-Man Far From Home, which revealed Peter Parker's identity to the globe. In a film chock full of cameos, Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange agrees to cast a spell to erase the populace's knowledge of Spider-Man's true self, but not before it goes wildly awry, introducing villains from various multiverses in films past, as well as the triumphant return of past iterations of the friendly neighborhood hero in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Ultimately, in order to protect the world from multiversal chaos, Peter Parker must allow the Sorcerer Supreme to complete the spell. Set for theatrical release, blah, 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 blah. I guess there's no more information there. I thought there was going to be more, but I've already read all that. So that is, that's exciting. I think that's exciting that they're going to go back and, go a little old school, because why not? I'm looking forward to that. Look, and I'm really hoping they can, perhaps since they have some time, I've said this on the John Campea show, maybe use a little bit of that time to sort of caress something in about the upcoming Doomsday into the movie. I don't know if he will. So let me read this. Let me see. So this is another article from Deadline on Kevin Feige. And let's see if he's talking about... I'm looking for this X-Men stuff. They're kind of saying the same things. I'm looking down. Thunderbolts. I'm looking down to see if he says something about X-Men. Captain America, blah, 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 blah. I haven't seen that, so I haven't seen what he said about X-Men in these articles. So I'll have to look that up and get back to you on that. So I haven't looked at that yet, Alexander Wilson, so I can't speak to that yet. But I will. Let's see, you've got A Journey's End. That's also a Next Generation episode, but I wouldn't show it to a high school class. I took my 3-year-old daughter to the Enterprise set in Ticonderoga, and unfortunately, she was terrified after seeing the transporter room, and we had to leave. Really? 3 years old. Wow, all the colors there. Did she at least get on the bridge? I got to tell you, James Cawley's Star Trek set tour, the original set tour in Ticonderoga, if you're a original Star Trek fan, you got to go. You got to go. It's insane. I got to shoot something there, and when I walked in and you see the bridge lit up, I mean, it was like you have an emotional response. I swear to God, it's so good. And now they have the original shuttlecraft there, and the restored shuttlecraft, and oh, it's great. But I'm glad your 3-year-old daughter is a trooper for going. Diddy Bop says Kang should have been great, more like Sherlock chasing Moriarty through time, which they tried to do in Loki Season 2, but other than that, it was a mess. I agree. And I did like Loki Season 2, but I hated the TVA. HoopBaby07 says, you can't buy Dark Angel or stream it, so gatekeeping or embarrassed is the dogma of shows that can't find it anywhere. Well, there's for a lot of people, it might not be anything to do with people not wanting you to see it. It could be a rights issue. Is Space Above and Beyond anywhere? I mean, that was only a 1-season show. I don't know if Dark Angel, it was kind of that era. There could be an issue, and I think Dark Angel's Fox, so they might be sitting on it for whatever reason. So it might not be anything nefarious. It might just be a rights issue, or people are holding on to it or holding it close to the vest. I don't know. That's an interesting question. DBZ now said, the problem with the TVA is that it conflates timelines with the multiverse too many times when they should be two distinct concepts. Amen. Then Multiverse of Madness confuses things further. I agree with you. Because in one universe, you can have multiple timelines. And then there's the multiverse with multiple universes. And I don't think that the writers ever figured that one out. And it's problematic. And I am with you 100% on that one. I totally agree. So, yeah, I am with you 100% on that. I wanted to read a letter. I have a letter I'd like to read on the show that I think is a good letter. It's a very compelling letter. And the letter comes to us from Signal Strength 5. Signal Strength 5 writes to us and says, good evening, Robert. This is a good letter. You often say on your live streams that you consider yourself a classical liberal. I do. I can say the same about most of my progressive family members who call the Pacific Northwest home, which is where I'm from. I myself joined the military at age 17 and retired after serving 27 years. I did not follow in my family's footsteps politically, and I'd say that my worldview is guided by more conservative, libertarian, and believe it or not, and when it comes to drugs and criminal justice, a few socialist tenets. I believe that. You often pontificate about politics on your show and rant against the current state of many of your favorite IPs, Star Trek being the target of most of your ire. You don't say. You blame poor storytelling and writers not knowing the histories of the IPs they write about. I'd suggest the problem is much deeper, insidious, and purposeful. And I recommend you read a book written by former classical liberal, the American playwright and author David Mamet. Oh, I have. The book is called The Disenlightenment, Politics, Horror, and Entertainment. And I believe, despite its title, after reading this book, you may find some enlightenment by Mamet's arguments on how we got to where we are politically, as well as his take on what has happened to the film and entertainment industries. I watch your content because I believe you're an expert when it comes to many of the IPs I love. I especially enjoy when you delve into your own personal Hollywood experience and share your in-depth knowledge about the process of making entertainment. But I have to say, you start to lose me when you start becoming sanctimonious about political issues. You often push the latest media-driven fear-mongering story regarding Orange Man bad or his administration's latest crimes against humanity. That has been the MO of the left for many years. Divide. We're right, you're wrong. Dissenting views and opinions are not allowed, although I would say that dissenting opinions have always been allowed on this channel. Speaking about politics on your show is fine. It should be encouraged. But I'd also say give the issue at least 72 hours before going off on a rant about it. And secondly, open up your sources of information to a few reputable conservative media sources. They do exist, and I avail myself of them all the time. I cast a wide net. People would be... I mean, it's really interesting. I'm always attacked... Well, let me finish your letter. The stories these left-leaning media echo chambers churn out are often debunked once the full story emerges. Totally agree. It didn't meet the initial hype. Well, I've taken up enough of your time. I hope you take my advice and read his book. I've read most of the books you've recommended on your show and have enjoyed most. David Mamet has a story to tell. I hope you listen. Well, first of all, David Mamet has been on many talk shows promoting that book and his new film with Shia LaBeouf. I'm a huge David Mamet fan. And while I know more about his movies, David Mamet is one of the great playwrights, and he comes out of Chicago theater, and his company of players and the people he worked with, and then the people that followed him, that started the Steppenwolf Theater, his pedigree is second to none. And the movies that he's made are incredible. I mean, things like House of Games. If you haven't seen House of Games, what an incredible movie. So he was the founding member of the Atlantic Theater Company, and he wrote a trio of off-Broadway plays in '76, The Duck Variations, Sexual Perversity in Chicago, and American Buffalo. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize in 1984 for Glengarry Glen Ross, of course. His play Race, which opened in 2009, featured James Spader, David Allen Greer, and Kerry Washington. He was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame. He's amazing. The guy's amazing. And he's also written a lot of, like, David Mamet wrote the script for The Untouchables. But he wrote, his first produced screenplay was the 1981 production of The Postman Always Rings Twice. He received an Academy Award nomination 1 year later for The Verdict. And by the way, let me just say, The Verdict is an original of his, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I love it. And he wrote screenplays for The Untouchables and Hoffa and The Edge and Wag the Dog and Ronin and Hannibal. And he received a second Academy Award nomination for Wag the Dog. And then he became a director. And, he's an incredible... The guy's incredible. And in his book on directing film, which is another book you should read of his, Mamet advocates for a method of storytelling based on Eisenstein's montage theory, stating that the story should be told through the juxtaposition of uninfected images. The method relies heavily on the cut between scenes, and Mamet urges directors to eliminate as much narration as possible. Mamet asserts that directors should focus on getting the point of a scene across rather than simply following a protagonist or adding visually beautiful or intriguing shots. Films should create order from disorder in search of the objective. So he's a really interesting guy. Now, what's really interesting about him is he started out as a classical liberal, and as many people, will tell you, he's become a conservative later in life. And in his new book, he talks a lot about what has happened in Hollywood, what has happened with writing, and how activism and a lot of leftist thought and things like that, we would talk about it on YouTube a lot as being woke or whatever. I think there's a lot of merit to what he says in the book. But in a way, here's something that I've seen, and I would say what has happened over the last 25 years that has been exacerbated by social media. And social media, when I think about social media, I was very active online in the late 80s and early 90s. The AOL chat rooms, Star Trek chat rooms, the Hollywood Cafe, things like that. And there was a lot of famous people that work in the industry that were involved in these chat rooms as well. And sometimes they were a scary place because there's a lot of very articulate people, and the insults that you had to endure were so brilliantly delivered that you had to just admire them, even if you were the one that was targeted with the insults. So, by the way, I do want to say I did get a tip from, and I gotta give this credit. Bonk bonk on the head. Bonk bonk on the head. Bonk bonk. That is from a Star Trek episode called Miri. Happy birthday, RMB. Well, thank you for that. I very much appreciate that. Bonk bonk on the head. And if you haven't seen Mary, it's not, you know what, it was not a favorite episode of mine when I was a kid. It's about me, but it's true. Our friend 1001 Johnny writes in and says, talking about Star Trek being overlooked as a great science fiction show by today's writers reminds me that on X, a lot of tokusatsu fans are discovering Ultra 7 for the first time. Much of modern Ultraman owes much to Ultra 7. Have you seen it, Rob? I love Ultra 7. That's something that goes all the way back. That's from my youth. If you haven't seen Ultra 7, Rob, something just hang on, let me get back to that. It might help cleanse some modern Trek off your palate. Ultra 7's great. And why wouldn't I want to see that? Ultra 7's great stuff. 1001 Johnny knows more about Ultraman than anyone else I've ever met in my entire life. But the thing about David Mamet is, and here's what I do feel is, look, I think a lot of people desire to do good in the world. Like, I choose to believe most people want to do good. Not what the Islamists are doing to the Druze right now, but I think most people want to do good. But I think that you don't know how. And the people that really set out to do good in this world are unsung heroes. You don't hear about them. And people who do good don't need to be patted on the back. They just do it. You know, whether you're somebody that helped your neighbor, whether you're somebody that volunteers, whether you get involved in politics at the local level, whatever good you're going to do, whether you're a spectacular teacher who takes an extraordinary interest in your students' lives, you know, people like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting or Dead Poets Society, you know, people like that. These are unsung heroes. There's a great Twilight Zone episode about unsung teachers, an original Twilight Zone episode. And I think the modern age has given people, when you are on social media, you can espouse a certain point of view, a certain political bent. You can be a performance activist or a performance do-gooder online, and you have immediately a bunch of people that would jump in and pat you on the back. I don't think that's do-gooding. I think that's performance activism, but I think what it's really about is just getting people to make you feel better by saying, you're great. Performance activism has nothing to do with the internet. It has everything to do with action and reaction. It means you go out into the world. You know, the one thing about our military, and I have never been in the military, but my very good friend Mike Schertz was a Special Forces Green Beret medic, and now he's an ER doctor. And you've heard me talk about, we've created a video version of his own medical lecture series called Crisis Medicine, Tactical Casualty Care, that relies on the military's TCC guidelines, Tactical Casualty Care Guidelines, as a reference. And I've worked with special operators since 2017, and Mike himself creating this video series. And the series is, so anyone, whatever your level of expertise is, even if you're a civilian that doesn't know anything, you can provide pre-hospital care during active violent events. That's what the Crisis Medicine series is all about. You can go look it up. Crisis Medicine, Tactical Casualty Care. It's a lecture series with scenarios that you can watch. It's not cheap, but I'm very proud of it. It's one of the things I've done in my life that I'm most proud of. And every year we've updated it. Unfortunately, because of active violent events or things like school shootings and bombings, and also we have things now like chemical attacks and airline incidents. I mean, anything that we can do to use TCC guidelines to help everyone. So if you were with somebody that's been hurt, you might have enough knowledge to save their lives by wound packing, by using tourniquets properly, whatever. And the level of I'm really happy about doing that. Now, I'm not out on the internet tooting my own horn about it, even though I'm doing it right now because I'm telling you. But Mike Schertz didn't create this show. Dr. Schertz didn't create this show because he wanted pats on the back. He's an ER doctor, and he's seen the results, and he wanted to make sure that if more people knew about how to provide pre-hospital care, people's lives would be saved, especially in active shooting events like what happened in Vegas when 500 people were shot. A lot of people lose their lives because EMTs and first responders can't get to them in time before they bleed out. But I think now on the internet, it's very easy to join tribes. It's very easy to get patted on the back. It's very easy to make yourself feel better, like I'm sticking up for myself. What I think is missing is the value of our society and how far it's come since, 2,000 years ago. Like, one of the things that I think we've lost is a basic general education. And I do think that most people, it's shocking to me how little general education most people have about basic history. And because of that, it's very easy to manipulate people's points of view using the great social media tools that are at our disposal. And for me, like, I always think that we should aspire to greatness. And it's frustrating for me. Like, I don't think Orange Man is necessarily bad. I think he's unqualified to be president, but I do like it when he makes decisive action. Unfortunately, I don't think his cabinet, the reason he picked the people in his cabinet has our best interests at heart. I don't think he picks the best people for the jobs. I think he picks the best people for the jobs that are supporters of him. And I don't think in government that's always the best thing to do. What you want to do is support. You want to have really capable opposition. You want really smart people that are working in your cabinet that also aren't going to go lockstep with you, because they're going to provide you alternatives that you might not have thought of. And you might reach loggerheads, but I think that's what a great political administration needs, is people that are working for the common good that aren't necessarily all on the same side. You need the push and pull. You need people that will tell you things that no one's blowing just smoke up your ass, and that's what I always have thought. And David Mamet has talked about the fact, he talks a lot about this, about what's happened to our entertainment, and that our entertainment is not necessarily being written by people who have the best interests at heart of the audiences that want to consume great stories. Everyone has become an activist, and not only that, but they completely take their civilization for granted. It's very easy to sit here and dump on the civilization we have without understanding where it came from. People can throw around, oh, it's a colonialist project. You don't know fuck all. And when people say that, I'm like, you don't know your history either. And you don't know all the struggle where America's come from. People forget that The UK and the United States ended slavery. Now, does that mean that we're the greatest, most moral nation in the world? No, but we ended a practice that somehow our nation, we fought the Civil War, but we had the Emancipation Proclamation. Then we had, of course, the Jim Crow South, which was horrific. But we did end slavery, and we have changed things. The thing is, it's a continuum. There's always good shit happening, the way there's always bad shit happening. But the important thing is to understand and keep moving forward and trying to make things better. Not alienating people, not putting yourself in a position saying, oh, I know best. You have to work with people, especially people that you don't necessarily agree with. That's what mature adults do. And I think that entertainment, and especially the stories that we've been hearing, the things that make me angry, is I feel that people don't know enough about storytelling. And they think that if I don't like the story, or it's from an alternative point of view from mine, then that should be, let's villainize that story. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's right either. I think that you need the push and pull. You need a true government that has, whether we have our Republicans and our Democrats, whatever you believe, we need them strong on either side in order to have that push-pull. Now our government is completely stagnant. I mean, it used to be that at least I've heard stories, where the Republicans and the Democrats, they all went out and drank with one another. They all had dinner with one another. They were friends. That's why they could call across the aisle, and they could have conversations and figure out how to make things work. I mean, if we had the Cuban Missile Crisis today, the world would have gone up in a nuclear fireball, let me tell you. And we need to be able to have really strong, smart people that understand what's going on. And to me, what's happened, and David Mamet goes into this at great length and much more eloquent than I ever could, but he talks a lot about how a lot of this kind of thinking, this progressive thinking, the fact that, I mean, we live in a world that allows us to still tell our stories. I've always said, if the people who are going to come after me, they're going to be on the left. They're not going to be on the right. They're going to be on the left. And I get pilloried for something I've said or done every day online. And it's really interesting because it's people that it's a gotcha. I'm going to come get you for this. And I'm like, look, I'm much more complex than this one thing you think of me. I have all kinds of friends from all kinds of places. I know people of all walks of life, of every shape, size, color, and creed. And if your one little thing that you want to come after me about is, if that's what you think is a gotcha, first of all, I'd ask, why are you coming to get me? Why don't you ask me a question first? Why do you think this? Why are you friends with this person? What do you believe? And the great thing to me about storytelling, the greatest thing about storytelling is, I believe, I've always said, the best fiction is the most truthful. Because what a story is trying to do is convey human truths. And they might be human truths that you've never experienced before. I mean, I remember reading Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man when I was a kid. I didn't relate to it at all. But it was a mind-blowing experience reading that book because I didn't know anything about what it's like to be a black man in America. And that book was really eye-opening. I was like, wow, I might not have really understood everything, but I realized there was a lot I didn't understand, and it was illuminating in a certain way. Nobody even reads those things. One of the most influential books I ever read when I was a kid was a book by Sinclair Lewis called Main Street. I read it in high school. And, it was about basically, in a nutshell, it was about a woman who wanted to change a community and make it the way that she wanted it to be. And she failed miserably. And that's in a nutshell. But the book, the storyline fascinated me. I resonated with it. I didn't necessarily identify with it, but the story resonated with me because I understood what Sinclair Lewis was trying to do. And that's why I love stories. I read lots of stories and I watch lots of commentators that I don't agree with. And if I said like, oh yeah, I have Charlie Kirk videos in my feed, do I believe in what Charlie Kirk says? No, but I do like watching him talk to college students and seeing what they say. And a lot of what Charlie Kirk says, he knows some history, he knows his religion. I don't agree with Charlie Kirk. I'm not necessarily a huge Charlie Kirk fan, but I certainly like watching those videos because I learned something. But people say, you can't watch him, he's a this and a that and an is and a phobe and a blah, and I'm like, okay, first of all, why is that your go-to position? The point is, it's not Charlie Kirk. The point is the dialogue that he's having with the college students. I learn as much about the college students themselves as I do Charlie Kirk. I just like I like watching what happens. And we don't have enough of that. We don't have enough of we don't have enough of people talking. People would yell at me that I watch Charlie Kirk. Look, he shows up my feed. I'm like, I'll watch this. I watch tons of things. I'm just not a political commentator, but I get angry when I see things. Let's do better. You know, when I see that NPR lacks funding, or the PBS lacks funding, and you know, people are like, well, it's partisan, it's this. Maybe so. But I also learned how to read and write from the Electric Company and Sesame Street. And I really like NPR because I like the fact that LAist has a lot of not just national news, but there's a lot of local news I would never know about if I wasn't listening to NPR all day long, every day. And to defund it, I think, is huge. The Voice of America, losing the Voice of America, that just allows everyone else to step in and fill that void. I think those are mistakes. I think we've sort of capitulated. And I would like to see America realize that not everything has a dollar value associated with it. Sometimes you do things that are immeasurably valuable where you have to spend money and you're not necessarily getting it back. That, you know, I tell you, if everybody just watched and heeded the lessons of all three Godfather movies, the world would be a better place. Because you know what? When Michael Corleone was trying to go legit in Godfather 3 and he had International Mobiliari, he talks about the fact when he's at I don't know if it's a session of Congress or he's making a presentation to shareholders, he says, I believe that helping my fellow man is profitable. And it is. We now live in a world where unless something is profitable or unless somebody's getting rich, we're not going to do it. The problem with that is the fabric of society sometimes making people better off is in itself its own reward. It might not have a dollar value associated with it, but getting people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and becoming better people by spending some money to help them get there is not a bad thing. To demonize migrants, especially like, look, I don't believe in free immigration. We need immigration control. We need to know who's coming into this country, and most of all, we need people to come into this country who want to be here. It's important. But to have jack-booted masked thugs carrying weapons around and going to people's immigration hearings, and if they have and waiting to arrest them, that's not helping anybody. That's not the way to do it. And unless you're trying to instill fear. So I can sit there and be critical of that and still at the same time say we need a strict immigration policy. But the way ICE and the way the Trump administration has been handling it, especially I've been in California for 37 years, I don't agree with. I agree we need to clamp down on illegal immigration, absolutely 100%. But the fact is the United States, for years and years and years, not everybody is here as a criminal. And if you've been here, if you came here illegally 50 years ago and you've got 4 kids and 3 of them are in the United States Marine Corps, I think you've proven the fact that you've done more for this country by creating 3 great kids that are now serving the country, that you don't need to be stuffed on a plane and sent back to Guatemala or wherever the fuck. You've given something to this country by coming here and giving your family and having 3 sons that are in the U.S. military. How many immigrants can say they've done that? I think a person like that should be given special dispensation because they've proven and they've done some service for this country. And I think it's wrong to deport those people, especially if they've got families. But that's just me. Maybe that's the liberal side of my personality. Some people, it blows my mind to see people go, deport them all. If they're here illegally, get rid of them. I don't believe in that. I don't think everybody should be deported. I think there's a lot of people who've done a lot of good here, and they're going to continue to do good if they stay. But now we've created a climate of fear that doesn't need to exist, and we've got masked thugs on the streets of America carrying firearms, riding around in military half-tracks and going into neighborhoods and instilling fear where there shouldn't be fear. That's un-American. That's not what we're about. So I can be critical of that. But anyway, that's just me. Where are we at? We're talking movies. But I really like that letter. I want to thank you for writing in. See, again, I appreciate it when somebody writes me a thoughtful letter. It can take me to task. I don't think that is a bad thing. You know what? I got another letter. I'm going to read another letter. Now, I can't, because this is about Superman. Why not? Srijan, it's S-R-I, Srijan Barua? Srijan Barua, that's a tough one. S-R-I-J-O-N, that's the first name, and Barua is the second. Hi, Rob. I wanted to write about the Superman movie and share some of my thoughts. To me, kindness is not something that needs to be spelled out or shouted. The line at the end on Lex Luthor's face about Superman's greatest strength was the weakest part of the film for me. While saving squirrels and dogs is clearly a good and humane thing to do, I believe kindness is shown when someone goes the extra mile. Tim King's Up in the Sky can be referenced here, where Superman travels to the edge of the universe to save a single child. In our everyday lives, too, a police officer saving a child is doing their duty. Superman saving a squirrel is touching, but when large buildings are falling at the same time with hundreds of people inside, that act alone doesn't express kindness. That's just his responsibility. I feel the film's definition of kindness needs some refinement. Superman should show it through his actions, not just in idealistic lines delivered out loud. This is the only part I would critique. I think a few more minutes with Clark Kent, not Superman, could have conveyed it better. I wish the movie had focused more on the man rather than the super. Otherwise, it was a solid and enjoyable comic book film. James Gunn delivered it well. This is Sri, writing from Japan. It's my first time writing, though I've been a long-time listener. I also have a letter I wrote comparing Who Mourns for Adonais with Marvel's Eternals. I'd love to send it to you someday. Sri, are you kidding me? Send me that letter. Who Mourns for Adonais compared with Marvel's The Eternals? Yes, please. A great letter, and thanks for writing in. By the way, if you want to write in a letter, you can see it on the screen, and just put in the subject Robservations or Robservations letter, and then whatever your subject is about. Just because when I do a search, I have so many emails that it's easy for me to find if it says Robservations. So, and write me anything you want. I'll read it. Let's see. Let's go back to where we are at. DBZ Now says, the problem with the TVA is that it conflates time. Oh, I already read that. Got that. A performing artist says, I've got so much to say. I got to send you a new letter. Well, you can. My good friend Kevin Rubio's here. He says, when all is said and done, Tony Gilroy is a great writer and showrunner. Alex Kurtzman is not. Neither is Akiva Goldsman. You said it, Kevin. I mean, hell, man, you've put more thought into your comic books than the writers of Star Trek Strange New Worlds have put in to their shows, and you got a lot less money. Evan B.E. says, what'd you think of Brian De Palma's films when they were first coming out? Did you like him as a director or write him off as a Hitchcock ripoff? No, I never did. I mean, if you go back to things like his early work, I mean, I didn't think that Carrie, I think Carrie was the first De Palma movie I saw. That is, I mean, it had split screen elements in it, but I didn't see that as a Hitchcock movie at all. I mean, you could say maybe some of Pino Donaggio's music, but I thought that was a pretty original film, and I probably saw that. I was way too young, but watching, I mean, I didn't really understand. Like, I remember seeing Obsession in the theater. I saw Obsession when it was a two-parter. I think it was, I went and saw The Manitou, and then I went across the street and saw Obsession. And even then, I hadn't seen Vertigo yet, but, you could tell it was very Hitchcockian. And when I finally saw Vertigo, I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing. But I think that while De Palma does things that remind you of Hitchcock, and sometimes he apes Hitchcock too much, I never saw him as a Hitchcock ripoff. And he was somebody, I mean, Phantom of the Paradise, that was not a Hitchcock. That had nothing to do with Hitchcock. And Blowout, I was more interested in, is this going to be like a riff on Antonioni? Which it kind of was. And so I never saw him that way. But when De Palma came out, I mean, he was a director whose movies I went and saw. The Fury, based on the John Ferris novel, that really wasn't Hitchcockian in the least. And I fucking love The Fury. I had to sneak into that movie. And then, and that, by the way, The Fury has an incredible John Williams score. I saw the Fury on a second, like a revival screen. It was a second double feature, second feature of a double feature. And I intimately knew John Williams' score for the Fury before I'd seen the movie. And it was funny because I had this picture in my head about what the movie was really about, and it didn't match that at all. I was really surprised, but I love the Fury because I'd seen this one picture in Fangoria magazine. It spoiled it, but man, it was so great what happens to John Cassavetes in that movie. So a lot of people talk about like Dress to Kill or aping Hitchcock, and Obsession clearly does, but he's done a lot of things that also don't do that. I mean, there's things I love. Snake Eyes. I just watched Snake Eyes in 4K. That whole opening, like 15-minute shot. So I liked him. I was a fan. I never wrote him off. He was, when I was a kid, you'd go see everything that Brian De Palma made. He was one of those guys because you would talk about him in genre circles because he'd made Phantom of the Paradise and he'd made Carrie and he made Sisters and so with Lois Lane. So he was legit, man. DBZ Now says, I just want to say that Orange Man Bad is a bit condescending to completely dissuade any criticism of the president. He works for us, not the other way around. Oh, I agree. And I think that there's a lot to criticize. I think maybe I always want things to be better. I'm of the belief that once the president is voted in, unless you have to spend, it's kind of counterproductive to spend his entire administration fighting him when we really should buckle down to get stuff done. I mean, I really think that America is there are people in this country that aren't interested in the good of the entire country. And I also think the tech industry isn't involved in wanting the entire country. I did an episode of the show about the Dark Enlightenment. It's like, fuck those guys. Who died and made you leader? You read the guys talking about the Dark Enlightenment, and a lot of them are very smart, and I'm like, you don't even know how to kiss a girl. Come on. You never have. So, Hoop Baby 07 says, will Supergirl go R? Why should it or shouldn't? Look, that's a harsh, Tom King's Woman of Tomorrow is a harsh story. I don't think it should go R. I think because ultimately it's a story about Supergirl and Krypto, even though Lobo's in it and stuff, and I think they're going to need to stick around. Before they go hard R, they really need to develop this as a 4-quadrant universe. They can go R later with Clayface, because people know, okay, that's a horror, body horror type of a thing. That would probably be a better film to do that with, but I don't think Supergirl should be hard R. I don't. BA says, David Mamet, Hoffa, yes. Yes, and Homicide, a movie Homicide, maybe want to go join the Jewish Defense League with Joe Mantegna. As funny as that might sound, that's a true story. So Captain J.T. Kirk is learning is listening to both sides, not just one. I totally agree. I mean, that's what people have forgotten. The problem that I have is that I'm of the opinion that I don't know everything, not even about Star Trek. There's always more to learn. And if you think you know everything about a subject, then you stop thinking about it. You never want to do that. You never want to stop thinking about a subject. You want to continue to listen and figure things out and always be open to having your perspective change. Because as you grow and learn more, your perspective constantly changes about things. And if it's not changing, you're not living well. Major Chai Chai, who I will be seeing this week, says, I saw My Neighbor Totoro at the theater again. I learned from the featurette at the end that E.T. influenced how Miyazaki introduced Totoro. What a wonderful connection between the two movies. Yeah, I mean, Miyazaki's heavily influenced by Western cinema. Totally. I love those movies too. Jim Wiley says, Otoy's Unification short had more heart and story than all of new Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, well, because the people that are making those love Star Trek. The problem with the people making new Star Trek is it's just a gig. It's just a job. But not only that, they're not even fans of the genre, which is sort of unfortunate. That's problematic. And the thing is, like anyone, if you're going to write science fiction stories, you need to have a working understanding of the genre of science fiction. You know, just like you can't watch a romantic, or you can't write a good romantic comedy without seeing romantic comedies. And I think it's weird that you have people, look, the way they've treated Spock, the way they write Spock, shows me they have no understanding of Spock, which means they probably never watched some of the great Star Trek episodes of the original series, like, well, maybe they've watched Journey to Babel, but, you know, the This Side of Paradise. You know, you're watching, they have a Star Trek romantic story with you know, This Side of Paradise, which when I was a kid, I didn't love it. It's a first season Star Trek episode. It's the one with the spores, where everybody gets hit with the spores. And you meet Leela Kalomi, who is a woman. They have an unrequited love. Spock, she was in love with Spock at the academy or wherever, and he couldn't return her affections. But when he was shot with the spores, he can go frolic with her in the trees and the grass, and it's. But if you watch that episode, it is so more mature and interesting and resonant and emotional and hard hitting. And then you go and try and watch Strange New Worlds, and you're like, why am I watching this junior high claptrap bullshit written by these people who, again, apparently their knowledge of human relationships does not extend past a Buffy episode. And it's frustrating. You can tell from the writing. And it's like, do better. Honor this franchise more. You've got this franchise that's going to be 60 years old next year in 2026. And you've got people that are writing copies of copies of copies because they have nothing to write themselves. And it's a bummer. Let's go rip off this Star Trek episode. Let's go rip off that Star Trek episode. It's so weird. I don't know. I wouldn't want my name on it. Matt Murphy says, I agree. A truly great leader would build a team of rivals, but our problems are bigger than one man, as illustrated by 2 presidential veto overrides since 2008. All of the Fed needs to get back in their respective lanes. Well, I tend to agree. I think, look, what our government needs to do is get back into the business of this republic and start. First of all, you have to admire America. America is imperfect as it is. You have to admire our Constitution. You have to admire the Bill of Rights. You have to admire where we've come from, where we've been. You have to admire this great nation and what this great nation is able to do. And the idea that you want to work well for all of the people. Like when you have our president come out saying that he hates half of our nation because they're Democrats. That's where I have a problem. Because you're like, oh, our president has just told, as a lifelong Democrat, I haven't always voted Democrat, but I'm a lifelong registered Democrat, to actually hear the leader that I hope would work for all of us, that he just dismisses. How are you supposed to take that? How are you supposed to take that? And everyone is so quick to tell you who they hate, or who they don't like. And I'm like, you know what? That's easy. Hatred, don't you watch Star Wars? It's easier, more seductive. Anybody can hate. It's much more difficult and much more impressive if you realize, you know, I don't like that guy, but that guy's part of my team. How do I get that person? And Star Trek was very good at that, especially Next Generation. Let's bring that guy on the team. Let's bring him in. You know, it's like Reg Barkley. They didn't like him, and Picard's like, look, I don't care. Figure out a way to work with him. We're all on the same ship here. And we don't have that. You know, I think guy wrote in, you know, the person who wrote that letter is asking me, Signal Strength 5. He was in the military for 27 years. In the military, you learn to look beyond the individual, you know, and you have to rely on the person next to you. You have to understand. You have to trust them. And you might not like them, but you have to develop a trust and a rapport with that person. That's what military discipline is about. Something they have no knowledge of in modern Star Trek. I don't believe there's no credibility to any kind of military. There's no military decorum in that show. I don't get it at all. It's I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So there you go. Alexander Wilson says, Rob, France was the first superpower to end slavery in 1794. Looks like you need to brush up on your history. Yeah, but I wasn't thinking about going back that far because France was aiding us in the Revolutionary War. But yes, that is true. but I was thinking about. I was only thinking about Britain and the United States. I was going back to only the 1800s, man. But you're right. And then, of course, France helped us in our war for independence against the British. So, they were like-minded. DBZ now says, I don't know if it's a hot take, but I believe the AI craze is overblown unless these companies truly want such an uneven economy that erodes itself. Well, it's not just about that. I don't think look, I would implore everybody, whether you like him or not, there was a press conference 6 days ago, maybe 8 or 9 or even 10 days ago, where they introduced Grok 4. I would implore everybody, even if you don't like Elon Musk, watch the press conference for Grok 4 and what it can do. I think it goes a long way. And then afterwards, whether you like him or not, watch Glenn Beck's analysis of that press conference. And again, say I watch all different kinds of people, but watch I implore anybody who's watching this right now, it might not be your jam, but it goes a long way toward making everybody understand how important what's going on really is. So watch Elon Musk's, it's the launch of Grok 4, it's their press conference. Watch it to the end, and then watch Glenn Beck's analysis of that press conference. I think everybody needs to look at this. Mr. H says, I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel pulls a Superman 3 and has Iron Man emerge out of Doctor Doom and they fight each other. I don't think they're going to go that far. But, hey, one never knows. One never knows. 1001 Johnny says, all of Ultraman is on Prime Video. All of it. If you revisit some Ultra 7, I recommend getting on board with the new show on YouTube, Ultraman Omega. It's really fun. It'd be really funny to hear how Ultraman compares to modern Trek. Hollywood might take notes like Gunn did. Maybe. You never know. One never knows. So I think, you know what? I think I'm going to end this show. It's like we've been going on for 3 hours. I mean, this is 6 hours I've streamed today. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's been a fun show. A lot of people here, a lot of new subscribers. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank my moderating staff, Tom Jr. Jackson, and everybody. You guys are all great, and thank you for that. And what can I say? I'll be, on the John Campea show tomorrow. We'll be doing some work this week, and of course Versus and everything else I'll be doing. The Comic-Con is coming up this week. It's going to be all very interesting. And we got Fantastic Four opening this week. By the way, I'll tell you, you know how Fantastic Four is going to do well? Because Hot Toys has announced all Fantastic Four, all members of the Fantastic Four, and they started a new line of toys with a giant Galactus. So if they weren't all in on Fantastic Four, Hot Toys wouldn't do that. And, a company like Hot Toys, they haven't even given us a Dora Milaje figure. By the way, I was the first to champion that. Now everybody's jumped on. They're all bandwagging it. But where's our Dora Milaje figures, Hot Toys? Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. It was a great show. Send me letters right down here, Burnett, 1701gmail.com. Remember, please put Robservations in the subject and then whatever it is you want to talk about so I know it's a letter. And I'm just going to assume if you send it to me, it's okay to read on the air. Yeah, the Gauntlet's thrown. You guys are writing some great letters. So thank you for that. I'll be back. By the way, somebody wrote a song about me, and we'll show that on the next show. Wow. But yes, and thank you all for being here, and thank you to the moderating staff, and we will, we're going to have fun. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson and Darth Plato and everybody. It's going to be a fun week. And on that note, Fantastic Four, assemble. Remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to you, have a better night.